Hello everyone, or as I say, the world, because we're over the internet, streaming live, in the clear. Florida Aviation Network, I'm Ben Coleman, one of your many hosts here at the Florida Aviation Network, coming to you live from the Aerospace Center for Excellence on the Sun and Fun campus. And as a matter of fact, this is the 45th annual Sun and Fun International Fly-In and Expo. And I believe there's a name change coming up. It was just announced, I believe, yesterday. Sun and Fun, can you help me, Mike? What's the new team? Okay, coming soon. There's a name change for that next interview. But anyway, the thing about Sun and Fun, if you're not able to come or be here, and I know if you're viewing this, it's on a laptop or your home computer or your smart TV. I mean, we can do that too. There's a lot of ways to get this on the internet, but we're here with manufacturers. We're here with the suppliers, the vendors, the enthusiasts, the home builders, the wannabe home builders, campers. If you blink here at Sun and Fun, you're going to miss something. But in the interim, we're here at the set at the Florida Air Museum, trying to develop the atmosphere for sharing information and sharing knowledge. And our next guest is a gentleman that has shared knowledge in many, many ways for many, many years. And the important thing is he's not finished. He and his group, they got a lot planned, and we're going to pull it out of him. We call him Mike Z.
Hey, good morning, Ben.
Mike Zadunas.
Zajunas.
It's easy for you
Mike
to say.
Z.
Mike Z. All right, let's go with Mike Z.
No one would know Zajunas anyway. Everyone knows me as Mike Z.
Or just, I've heard you be called Z.
I've been called a lot of things, sir. Let's say with Mike Z.
Mike, you've been coming to Sun and Fun here for the past, say, 22 years.
22 years, yes.
And in that 22 years, I've seen you morph from a caterpillar to a big monarch butterfly. And the next morph is probably from that butterfly. You're gonna turn into probably an eagle of some sort. I don't know if it's golden or bald, but
it could be probably closer to bald.
But Mike, seriously, you have done a lot here, and you have you've gotten a lot of awards. But I'm proud to know that there's people that know how to accept awards without letting it go to their head, and you're one of them. Really, it's one thing to be acknowledged, but it's another thing to be honorable and to know where your passion comes from that drives you. What drives you to do what you do as much as you do it? And most of it was done free for a long time until somebody realized that this man, he's losing all of his free time. So let's give him a job.
Yeah, that's exactly how it happened.
Tell us how that happened, Mike.
So you talked about my involvement with Sun and Fun for the last 22 years. And I've watched Sun and Fun evolve, where a long time ago it was spring break for pilots. Mm-hmm. And now along comes ACE and the Aerospace Center for Excellence. And when Sun and Fun was spring break for pilots, it was the sky was the limit. We said it all the time. Mm-hmm. Well, now that we're Aerospace Center for Excellence, the sky's just the beginning. Mm-hmm. And you'll see that around the campus some different places. Mm-hmm. So we've evolved into this thing. For years, Sun and Fun's been trying to get this education thing off the ground. Mm-hmm. And Mr. James C. Ray had a lot to do with that thrust that got us over the goal line. Mm-hmm. And he built the school. And so the school grew, and then there's a scholarship that grew out of that relationship with the Ray Foundation, and it started producing pilots. And so now you've got a 17-year-old private pilot who's a junior in high school who might have a part-time job. Mm-hmm. Now what? What's he going to do next? Mm-hmm. So the Lakeland Aero Club was formed to give them something to do, and Mr. Ray had some very decided ideas about things, and felt that Cubs were the thing that people should fly. They're inexpensive to operate. They require some decent skills, and they're slow. I mean, it's 3 hours to the Georgia border in a Cub, so these students need to build time. They don't need to go anywhere. So it started with the restoration of the Cub. There were a lot of people who thought there was no way teenagers were going to restore a Cub and fly it. And 3 years after school and weekends, a group of teenagers under my supervision made this Cub, and we flew it up to Oshkosh. They flew it up to Oshkosh, and that's when Mr. Ray takes me by the forearm, which he would do when he was serious, and told me that this was growing, and that I needed a job, and if this became my job, what would I do, and what did I envision? And what I envisioned was a smaller version of what we've built, and it turns out it was in line with his vision about having a grass runway and having kids be able to walk from school to the hangar and restore airplanes, work on airplanes, hang out at the airport. You know, today we live in a world where we've got black fences around everything, and it's not a very welcoming and inviting environment. We understand the need for that, and that's not going to go away. So what we did was create a way to get rid of that. So the fence is still there, but the kids can walk from the school. They don't go through a fence. They go through our clubhouse and into our hangar and out onto the grass runway, so they can hang out at the airport.
We call them fence hangers, as you will. But rather than hang on the fence, they're able to come
They're actually
behind
able
the
to
curtain.
come through without being impeded by that fence.
Well, I tell you, Mr. Ray was one heck of a gentleman, and he was colorful, and like you say, the way that he would grab you and come here,
Take
son.
you by the arm.
Come here, son.
Yep.
I enjoyed every meeting that I had with Mr. Ray. Sometimes he could be hard. There's a stubborn streak in there.
Well, it's funny you say that, because the only picture he permitted us to put up in the hangar of him while he was alive, it says James C. Ray, curmudgeon, across the bottom of it.
But again, and Mike, that's the whole thing, that we're here trying to show young people. When I say young people, you know, young people used to be 15, 20 years old. Now, young people are 40, 50 years old. It's all relative, the way that the goal line shifts.
As we get farther along.
60 used to be old. 60's not that old anymore, guys. But the thing is, sharing this with the younger, let's say the new generation of aviators. And that new could be 15 years old, 12 years old, 40 years old. You can get involved with it at any time. So with what you have done, and I wish that we did have some B-roll, but I'm going to employ our viewing audience to pull up Lakeland Aero Club. Just Google Lakeland Aero Club, and you'll see some of the things going on over there. Mike, what you guys have done, if I was in Iowa, how could I do what you guys have done? Maybe not to that degree, but is it duplicatable? Do you share your knowledge?
Yes, absolutely. So what we've done, I mean, this is a process. We're 7 years into this, and we're seeing the results of that. And it started small. It started with a raggedy old Cub and a crazy volunteer who was willing to sit there and teach these kids how to cover tail feathers. And it started with
That
three
would
or
be
four
you.
kids. Yeah, that would be me.
Okay.
And but in my journey here, I've recognized that we don't have a generation gap. We have a 2-generation gap. Okay, these kids would be our grandchildren's age if we stop to think about it. Okay, that really makes me feel old. I'm turning 60 later this year. So that's the first thing we have to realize. And then the way we communicate is completely different between when we were their age and how they are today. But the love of aviation is the same. They're passionate about airplanes and the joy of flight and that exhilaration when you lift off the ground, the whole thing. So that's the first thing we have to do. And there's a funny YouTube video, I'm sure we've all seen it, where the 2 14-year-olds are trying to use a rotary dial phone. Have you seen this? 4 minutes. They are unable to dial a number.
Yeah.
Now, before we make fun of that, I don't know how to work this smartphone very good, and they roll their eyes at me. So how dumb you are just depends on how old you are and what you grew up in. So that's the first thing that people who want to get involved in this and want to make a difference need to understand. And when you're talking about expanding this, a magic thing just happened. the Ray Foundation just gave EAA $1 million to do flight training scholarships through EAA chapters. So this does a couple things. One, it's going to help bring more pilots in, but it's also revitalizing these EAA chapters. So I've been invited to speak at numerous EAA chapters saying, how did you get this? What did you do? And the most important thing is I have only one agenda, and that these young people get aviation opportunities in a safe and professional environment. That's it. I get nothing. All right. I retired when I was 40 and came back when I was 45 to do this. All right. I'm really good at retired. I've seen me do it. Okay, so
you could do that again someday.
I could do that again. I'm doing this because I love it and I see what's going on. And if you had told me 10 years ago that I was going to be surrounded by 20 high school kids every day, every single day working on airplanes, I would have, no, there would have been no way I would have said that was happening. So you really have to kind of recognize yourself in these young people when you were that age. I was that annoying kid, riding down to the airport. If you threw your hangar door open, I was there, where are you going?
Questions.
Can I go?
100 questions.
Yeah, and I soloed an airplane before my dad would let me solo the family car, so I'm pedaling down to the airport on 10 speed so I could just hang out, and I was a pest. I was a complete pest. So I can see that, and there's not a lot of difference. Hairstyles change, clothing styles change, even telephones change, but that love of aviation is unchanged, and I imagine it was that way since the Wright brothers first flew.
And I think it's going to continue to be that way, Mike. You and I are, I guess it's called a kindred spirit. I refuse to grow up. Really, it's overrated. I do not want to be an old person. Now, the body may tell different, and I used to have locks of hair that just, you probably had hair too. Remember the old the 70s, the big hair days? Well, hair's overrated. You don't need that much. I got just enough. Never mind, I won't go there. But I refuse to grow up, and I think you're a kid at heart.
Right.
And you're going to be a kid till you die.
Right. I don't know what I want to do when I grow up.
No, we're just still having fun at it.
Yeah.
And Lori mentioned this earlier. By the way, that's Lori's daughter on camera 3.
Yeah. Hey.
Francisca, thank you. Just a little quick plug for one of our volunteers. It's going to be fun because we never work a day in our life. When you enjoy aviation, enjoy what you do, it's not work. And I grew up around airplanes as well. Dad had a Cub, and when I was 5 years old, we'd go flying in 5, 6, and if I sat down in the seat, I couldn't see. So I would have to get up in the seat on my knees or stand up in the back and straddle the stick. Of course, then it was hard to maneuver the controls, but those are good, fond memories when you're growing up, hanging around a grass strip with Cubs, and somebody gets a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken, and there's your Sunday afternoon. That's it. Well, I think I'm going to go out and fly a little bit. We have the opportunity to bring that back because we're losing a lot of our small airports. However, there's a lot of new private airports popping up, and if we can get folks like you to continue to get the young population and the new families. I mean, there's whole families that love to hang around airplanes, go to airports, and just go out for a ride. You want to go for a ride? Really? Can I really? I really. That's the payback right there for the fuel, your time, everything.
Right. Well, you were talking about small airports. I think that we at Lakeland have the model. We have an international airport that has Draken, it has NOAA, it's expanding and building in a cargo facility, it's got customs, it has 2 aerobatics boxes that if you've got the right credentials you can open in 24 hours. It has a model airplane runway. It's got the grass runway for the students. So how did that happen? And the way that happened was we have an airport manager who is brilliant. He tries to not use no, he works towards a yes. And when you think about we have the only public high school built on an airport in America.
International airport.
International airport even. So I don't know that it has to be in a small airport environment. I had the pleasure of meeting the deputy administrator for the FAA, acting deputy administrator, and we were talking about this, and he was asking me, how can we facilitate, we the FAA, moving this forward? And I said, well, some of the obstacles, we overcame them with creativity. We built the high school on Sun and Fun's property, which is a leasehold from the airport, which was kind of a bit of a loophole. But why should we jump through those hoops? Why shouldn't we, encourage, at the federal level, at the airport manager and local level, this kind of thing, and we hold it up as an example. This airport, I am so proud to be at this airport, and it's been a community. It's not me. It really isn't me. I'm just holding the flashlight, and everyone goes, he's crazy. And the next thing they go, well, that worked, and whoop, he's crazy, and that worked. But it took people at Sun and Fun, the Sun and Fun volunteers, 3,300 volunteers here every year doing the fly-in. It took the school board thinking a little bit outside of the box. It took an airport manager who was willing to take a chance. It took a city of Lakeland to go, oh yeah, this is making sense. It took the FAA even looking at, well, yeah, we haven't seen this before. Insurance company, okay? My insurance company, when I told them that I had teenagers training in tail draggers, most of them laughed at me or slammed the door in my face, but we were able to work with Alexander Aviation and come up with a plan that we could afford to do this and insure it. So there is a way, and we're here to help everybody who wants to try to do this. And everybody's situation is going to be a little bit different, but there's a way to get to the yes. And that's the most important message I think that can go out. And it isn't one person. It's a collection of people with ideas. They throw it in there, and we figure out how to make it happen.
Well, we we don't give plugs here on Florida Aviation Network, but if Gene Conrad is listening, we would thank him very much for all that he's done. And he is, now mostly I say, well, he's, what a great guy. He has no agenda. Gene has an agenda.
Oh yeah.
and he will tell you what his agenda is, and he's going to grow this airport until it can't grow anymore. And attention to detail and professionalism. You see that, I think, all the way through the environment here, and it's refreshing. But when I say small airports, there's flyouts. Let's say. Do you guys do flyouts?
Yes.
Okay. And when you fly out, what destination? How do you choose your destinations?
Sometimes they're event-based. We've been working with the folks at Triple Tree Aerodrome.
Excellent.
They last year, a couple of young people, a young lady that just got her pilot's license. I think she's maybe 18 years old. She was one of Ron Alexander's students, Kayla McLeod. Decided that she wanted to have a youth fly-in, and Pat Hartness, who owns Triple Tree Aerodrome, thought he had the perfect place. He's got a little grass runway up in South Carolina that's 7,000 feet long and 400 feet wide. And it's all putting green grass and a beautiful camping area. And when you go there, the people are really friendly, and in his fall fly-in, they get 900 planes. But at the first youth fly-in, they had 300 people participate. And I like to think that that place is kind of how Sun and Fun was 30 years ago, 35 years ago, with the hospitality, and it was still just a fly-in. So that's one that we like to do. We've done 5 trips to Oshkosh. 26 teenagers have flown themselves across the country in airplanes older than their grandparents in 5 trips.
Wow.
So that's the Mac Daddy of flyouts. It's a flying circus, literally, of slow airplanes. This past year, it was epic. It took us a week to get up there. The weather was terrible. We had really bad headwinds the last 2 days. In a Cub, you're used to getting passed by cars, but we were struggling to pass a combine at one point. And for 2 days, anytime we got over 60, and that's 60 miles per hour, not knots, we were jumping up and down for joy. So it was 20.5 hours of flying. So these kids didn't get to see America from 1,000 feet. They got to examine it.
And like you say, the slowness, Nick Kane, bless his heart, that young man's hair is on fire, and he loves to fly fast. I say, Nick, and he loves to do aerobatics.
Yes,
and he's a good little aerobatic pilot.
Good.
He's one of your proteges, I guess. But I say, Nick, when you can do what you do in that Pitts, which he built with his grandfather, do that in an Aranca Champ or a Cub or a Taylorcraft. Now we're talking, buddy.
Yeah, but you know what? Nick Kane got 6 pages in sport aviation, and I've never gotten so much as a sentence. So I'm just thumbs up. He has done so well. We're so proud of him. We saw him up at Oshkosh. When we were there, he joined us. We were hanging out and reminiscing. He was one of those teenagers who, when he was still learning to fly, flew himself across the country on our first trip to Oshkosh.
And again, I'm not taking anything back from Nick, but you do that in a little slow, little bitty airplane. Now we're talking.
Well, he did that his first trip. We went pretty slow going up there the first time.
He told him, there's hundreds of stories.
Yeah.
If nothing else, thousands of stories. And the hangar flying aspect, do you employ that? And I haven't been over to see your curriculum over there yet, but hangar flying, so much that you can learn just sitting on a stump, just talking about aviation, get some old codgers in. That have a young air about them, if you will, because sometimes you get some old codgers and you just not much fire there.
Right.
Get an old codger with fire in his belly. Do you talk about that?
Oh yeah, it was always great to when James was still alive, he would come in and hangar fly, and we would entertain questions and we would talk about soloing his PT-22 as if it were yesterday. And one thing I would say to older people my age, your age, and older, these kids haven't heard your stories, and they actually do want to hear them. Here's a whole new audience of people who are going to appreciate the things you've done. So take a minute and tell your story, and then remember that you're sharing that story to make them better, not to brag about yourself.
Well, and again, the thread of safety that you guys use over there is. It's interwoven into your system. I do know that. And Mr. Ray and I, when we were talking before he passed, it was always something that we always came back around, and he was a strong advocate of safety.
Well, our safety is achieved through following a procedure. Procedure was written because of an accident or a problem. So we stick to the rules like glue. We don't really think about safety per se. We think about being a professional and following the procedure. So when it's not right, we don't fly it. We maintain a 0 failure rate. That's our thing. Air Force One doesn't fall out of the sky. They do it. They have unlimited money, but they stick to a procedure that's been time established, and that's what we want to teach. We don't just run off it. And I tell them there are no probablys in aviation. And then when they start pushing it and keep bothering me and that, well, we should do it, we're pushing to go, weather's may be questionable, airplane's a problem, or they're not well, all those human factors, and they keep pushing me, I'll say, well, can I have your stuff? And that usually pulls everybody back in line. I go, it's serious business, and there's no second place in aviation. You either have the right stuff or you don't, and it's really important, and you can learn the right stuff. That's the neat thing. You're not born with it. Nobody's born with it. It's something that's learned and trained.
There's one thing that I have not seen in the walls around the Academy, and I'll leave you with this phrase as we wind it up here, is it, Mike? But we all know it, we've all heard it, but we just don't see it enough. But takeoffs are optional, landings are mandatory.
We have a perfect record. We haven't left one up there yet.
That's true. Mike, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ben.
And let's do this again someday.
Yes, sir.
Maybe at the 46th annual Son of Fun. Hey, I'm Ben Coleman, one of your hosts, and it's such a pleasure to be here with you. And our sponsors, thank you so much. The Bohemian Ministry of Tourism, these guys bellied up to the bar, and Signature Flight Support. Well, what can we say? Thank you for your time and your efforts and your funding. See you next interview.